Now you've heard from Big Red Liquors. Let's hear from again. Now you've heard from Big Red Liquors. We're going to hear from today's show. Now you've heard from Big Red Liquors. We're going to hear from today's featured guest, my main man, Kevin Lowe. After meeting him virtually and seeing him at Podfest, I knew he had to be on because in his 30s, Kevin Lowe is a remarkable entrepreneur who has taken the world by storm. I can say I've seen him, but he has not seen me because despite the seemingly insurmountable challenge of losing his eyesight in 23, Kevin has risen to success and purpose-driven life coach and the engaging host of the popular podcast Grit, Grace, and Inspiration. Let's welcome my friend Kevin Lowe to the show. Mr. Lowe, how you doing, my friend?
I am doing amazing, man. Excited to be here.
I am too. I'm excited that you're here too. So my first question to you is, what does being blind mean to you?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess we could say basically it means I don't see. Um, but being blind, honestly, it's taking on a different definition. I would tell you when I first went blind, I would tell you that it was horrible, that it was a real life nightmare. Today, now over 20 years later, it's just part of life. I've just learned to see life differently now.
How do you see life differently?
Well, so I have learned how to kind of harness the power of being blind, and that is I found a lot of blessings in it. And that is I find that I pay attention to things much more, detail much more. It is not uncommon for me to be with my family and to be out somewhere and us return home and me be talking about whatever feature it was of where we were, like how amazing it was, and they're like, oh, I didn't even notice that. And so I just pick up on things much better that way. And the same is true for, I think the biggest blessing is honestly the way in which I get to meet people. I don't have that initial visual cue that already starts forming opinions in my head of who this person is. It takes me actually getting to talk to the person. And therefore I like to say that I feel like I see people much better than people with sight.
I could That could be an argument right there. And you're talking about
Yeah,
picking up on things. Believe it or not, those on the spectrum often do that as well. They pick up on things quick. So autism and
yeah,
blind intersect when they are picking up on things quickly
yes,
than other people.
absolutely.
So what were your initial thoughts when you saw you were going to be blind?
So it was actually something that happened completely unexpectedly. So when what caused it was I had a brain tumor. And so I was 17 years old and in my junior year of high school when we found out that I had this brain tumor. And luckily it was non-cancerous, but literally they gave me at most 6 months to live if this tumor was not removed. And I went into the surgery expecting that everything was going to go perfectly fine. That is exactly what the doctors told us was going to happen. That literally they would go in, they would remove the tumor. I'd be out of school for about 3 to 4 weeks, and then life could return to normal. And instead, I came out of that surgery and everything changed. And the biggest was the fact that about a day after coming out of the surgery, my family realized, because I have no memory after surgery for probably about a month later, they found out that I could not see. So I was totally unexpected, left completely blind, meaning no light perception, shape, shadows, nothing. As well as lost my ability to smell, short-term memory loss for 6 months, and all kind of other medical issues that I still deal with today, related to the fact that the tumor killed off my pituitary gland.
Well, that's well now that we're going into well now that we're going into that topic, let's dive into that a little bit. So do you miss any smells, first of all? And what are some of the other medical issues that you have? Please tell us them.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know what? Smell is something I think is really kind of interesting because I can't say now, maybe back when it first happened, maybe I would miss the smell of walking into my nana's house on Thanksgiving and smelling the turkey. But it quickly became smell is just something that it's just absent. It's like you don't realize it, you don't realize that you can't smell until every once in a while I'll have the weirdest thing happen is every once in a while I'll all of a sudden smell something. I don't know what in the world triggers it. I've had some doctors say that it's something to do with my taste buds. I don't know. But every once in a while, I'll smell something and it makes me realize, honestly, like, wow, I'm missing out on this whole other dimension of life. And so that's been really weird. It's definitely been easier to get past not being able to smell than it was getting over not being able to see. That is for sure. And yeah, the other medical issues. So the brain tumor that I had, it as I said, it completely killed off my pituitary gland. And that is how we found the tumor in the first place, is that I was, 17 years old. I hadn't hit my growth spurt. I was only like 5'3", hadn't gone through puberty, had migraine headaches every day of my life, all these different issues. And that's what led us to have me get an MRI and finally discover that I had the brain tumor. And so after having the brain tumor removed, I then had to go on all these different medications that I'm still on today to replace what your pituitary gland does naturally. So your pituitary controls all of the body's hormones. And so here I am today, just over 20 years after going blind, after that surgery, and I still deal with a lot of the same medical issues. It's a constant balancing act of medicines. My body, like when you get sick, for example, a normal person, their body will, immediately start creating extra, like the steroid and stuff to help fight off that. Well, my body doesn't do that. And so I have to realize, oh, okay, now I have to increase the dosage on that medicine. And it's just a constant battle. And man, there's some days when I just don't feel good. And it's just related to this condition that I have. And I've often said that in some ways this condition is more of a disability than even being blind. Because I said you can find ways to get around being blind, but you can't really find ways of getting around when your body has no energy and you can't do anything.
Sure, I can see where you're going with that because some days your body likes you, and some days your body just doesn't. I'm going through that recently. I have allergy issues. So
Yeah,
there are points in
absolutely.
my days in life where I've been coughing a little bit too much than a usual day.
Yeah,
So, how do you think someone who is blind brains operate?
absolutely. Um, person's brain's attack. If you did like an MRI of somebody who's blind, their brain's visual cortex, it has just zero activity. And but we'll maybe get to it later on. Is somebody though who's blind who then uses echolocation, their brain's visual cortex is lit up just like somebody who can see. I'm not sure exactly if that answered your question, but that's kind of the technical aspect of it.
Works for me. So, what is the most rewarding?
Awesome.
Cool. So, what is the most rewarding and the most difficult part about being blind?
Oh man. Most rewarding. I guess probably the most rewarding thing for me is not necessarily story that I get to share about having my life completely flipped on its head and being forced to rebuild my life, to recreate my life, to discover a whole new identity of who I was, what I loved, what I dreamed about. And so I think that's probably the biggest thing that I look at it as a blessing is that I actually help other people who are going through all different kinds of challenges in life to just be there as an inspiration to remind them that you're so much more tough and able to overcome stuff than you can even imagine. And that's the most rewarding. And then was your other question like what is the toughest part about being blind?
Yep.
I think the biggest thing for me is freedom. Um, being blind, obviously I can't drive. And when I went blind, I had been driving. I got my dream truck when I turned 16 years old. And I had that. I mean, I rode dirt bikes and four-wheelers all growing up. And becoming blind, it took away the freedom of movement. And yeah, I mean, I can, call an Uber, yeah, I can, get around by myself, but it's not like I can just jump in a car and take a ride. Or it's not just as easy as, when down here in Florida we have hurricanes coming and I'm like, hey, let's evacuate and get the heck out of here. And other people are like, no, let's stay. Well, I don't have the choice to just leave on my own. And so that is by far the toughest thing about being blind is the lack of freedom.
I can hear you. Yeah, I can see where you're going with that because in some points you need to be singing 3 Days Grace, I'm on my own. I mean,
Yeah,
not everyone can do everything for you.
exactly.
So, what advice would you give to others who are blind or just lost their eyesight?
My biggest thing is to just give yourself grace, to let yourself heal in your time. I had a lot of people, these so-called experts, different counselors at different blind centers who would tell my parents Kevin needs to accept what has happened. He needs to move on. He needs to move forward. Very soon after becoming blind. And luckily I had amazing parents who realized that was not me, that I needed to come to that point on my own time. And so for anybody else, I would encourage you to give yourself the grace to realize that, yeah, your life has just pretty much been shattered, and to give yourself time to grieve. And then when you are ready, and only when you are ready, start moving forward and just start taking one little step forward at a time. And looking back on it now, it's easy to say, but if you give it a little bit of time, I promise it will get easier and you will begin to love life again.
Well, let me ask you this then. How, as a world, can we improve on never stop moving forward? And what do you do every day that shows you never stop moving forward?
Oh man, biggest thing for me is getting out of bed every single morning with a mission and a smile. Um, from the time I went blind, every morning I got up, smile on my face, and I just kept doing the things I need to do. I kept moving, kept having fun, finding ways to enjoy life again. And that is how I keep moving forward, is not only just getting up and being sure that I'm getting moving, but also having goals, things that I'm working towards, things that I'm excited about. I feel like a lot of times we miss that key ingredient to life, and that's having things that we're excited about. I mean, goals are great, but the goals need to have you excited, that pushes you forward. And I feel like a lot of people miss that key ingredient in life is having stuff that you're excited about. And luckily, I have really used that as a big motivator to me, to keep me pushing through even on the hard days.
And what I like too, it's not the same for everybody. For me, something that makes me excited is amusement parks. For you, it's probably
Yes.
life coaching.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's different from everybody. And that's what's cool, you know?
I would agree. Or for both of us, going to Podfest, which leads me to this question. What were your thoughts of me at Podfest when we actually met in person?
Oh my goodness. Well, I would say you are pretty much just like you are here on the podcast. I mean, your personality is literally just the same. Your voice is just the same. I can't say anything about how you look, to see if how you look matches up with your voice. I'm no judge of character on that regard, but in terms of just who you are, that's what I think is really cool. Is because literally who I met in person is literally the same person who is here on your podcast.
Right. And how'd you hear about me again? Because before Podfest, you heard about me somehow. I just can't remember what happened between us two.
Oh goodness. Yeah, I mean, I somehow learned about, your podcast, Autism Rocks and Rolls. Somehow just, I mean, I've been doing the podcast thing since, 2020. And so just being involved in that whole world with Podfest or just all the different like Facebook groups that are about podcasting, I'm sure it was through some type of means like that that I discovered you and your story and your podcast. Yeah.
All right. I couldn't remember, but I knew somehow we did, or otherwise we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
So I want to know about technology. So have you used any technology to help yourself? If you do, what technology do you use?
Oh yeah. So thank goodness I always say that I went blind in the right time era, and that is because technology has made my life um very easy in a lot of ways. And even since I went blind, the technological advances are extraordinary. And so literally today, I have a normal laptop computer, just like anybody, but I have a software program called JAWS, and it is a screen reading software program. And so basically, it enables me to use a computer just like anybody. And so as I'm typing, it's literally telling me each key I'm pressing. Plus, I'm navigating, through the computer and on the internet and everything without a mouse. Instead, I'm just using all keystroke commands and it's reading the whole time, depending upon where I'm navigating it. And so that has been a game changer. The iPhone, when the iPhone came out, the first iPhone was not accessible, but starting with like the iPhone, I think the iPhone 3, they finally included a built-in screen reader called VoiceOver. And that has continued to improve along with the iPhone. And honestly, man, I do everything I really need to with either my laptop computer or my iPhone. And because what's amazing is on my iPhone, not only is it accessible, just like anybody, I can use the phone, but I have these different apps. One of the best I have is called Be My Eyes, and it is an app I have on my iPhone. And the way that it initially worked is that you would click on the app and people would have downloaded the app and would either mark themselves as a user or a helper. And literally, what was cool is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you could click on that app and say that you needed help seeing something. And all of a sudden, within like 30 seconds, you would be put in live video feed with somebody anywhere in the world who was marked as a helper. And so they could then see what your camera sees and they could help, you see whatever you were trying to find out, whether it was, what was there in the kitchen or trying to determine what color the shirt is. And so that was amazing. But then with the introduction of AI, they now have a feature that is absolutely mind blowing. And the Be My Eyes app, I open it up now and I take a picture. And within a few seconds, it describes the scene in the most pristine detail you can imagine. It's absolutely just incredible, life-changing type of technology. And so that has been a really big blessing in the realm of blind accessibility for sure.
Well, what do you do when the technology screws up? Let's just say, for example, Jaws, when you're trying to type an O, it wants a T. It says you're typing in a T. Like, well, let me try again. What when you what do you do if technology screws up? For example, when you are using Jaws, you go for a U and it's telling you it's a U, but in reality, it's a P.
Yeah,
I'm here, brother.
okay,
It just
perfect.
my technology is being weird. I'll start over that again. Well, what do you do
Okay.
when technology screws up? For example, if Jaws is telling you it's an I and it says it's an I, but in reality it's an O.
Yeah, so luckily I've not had any kind of issues like that, like it screwing up on telling me one key and it's actually doing something different. But I have the issues with technology just like everybody has, where all of a sudden you're open up your computer and it's decided to do an update and it's changed everything. And now my jaws maybe isn't talking, it's not working. And so when it's not working, I mean, I am totally done for. And so I have to try and get some sighted help. Now, one thing I have learned to do is utilizing that same app I talked about, the Be My Eyes app, is I have learned now in instances where jaws has quit talking, I will use my iPhone and take a picture of my computer screen, and it can at least tell me if there's a pop-up window with some type of error message or whatever. And so that has been a saving grace for sure. I just technology is one of the greatest things, honestly, for me, especially being blind, because it is just made so much of the world accessible to me. But when it doesn't work, it can be the most frustrating thing in the world.
Yeah, I feel bad for you if we had a yeah, I feel bad for you if you had a power outage.
Exactly.
Or you know what might happen, Kevin? You might not watch Jaws because you tell me that's never happened to you. Well, let's just say on April Fool's Day, things happen with me.
Yes. Exactly.
Or maybe I'll change the language. Maybe instead of it's English, it's Japanese.
Yeah, that would just be great. No, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem, buddy. Just trying to help out a little bit. So I want to talk about your life coaching a little more. So how did you get Rise to Your Purpose business running?
Will you repeat that question?
Sure. How did you get Rise to Your Purpose business running? Your life coaching business.
Yeah, so I started coaching really through because of the podcast. And so when I started my podcast, I had been a travel agent for 7 years. And then the 2020 pandemic happened and that business basically crumbled, and that's when I started the podcast kind of out as a hobby. And through the podcast, I kept really getting into these really amazing interviews with some of my guests. And I kept having so many of my guests at the end of the interview tell me, they're like, Kevin, they're like, you should really be a coach. You should be a life coach. They're like, you ask questions that no one asks, or they're like, you see parts of my story that people never see. And it was kind of funny because when I started a podcast, I had no idea what a podcast even was. And when I would become a coach, I literally, the first time I heard of it, I had no idea what a coach was. I had only ever heard of a PE coach in school. And so that is how I got introduced to the realm of it. And so slowly but surely, I ended up becoming a life coach, and then slowly kind of have keep like niching down a little bit into what I call like you know, purpose, life purpose coaching. And that is basically helping somebody to identify their life's purpose and then helping them basically design their life around that purpose, because I have come to find out in my own life that if you want a life of fulfillment, of joy, you got to be sure that you're in alignment with your purpose.
All right. Well, first of all, okay, yeah, I can see that. First, yeah, I can see that. First of all, you were actually you. Well, first of all, yeah, I can see. Try this again. First of all, yeah, I can see that. But you were actually the same as my mother is. And for listeners, C105, meet my mother. When I told her I'm going to start a podcast, she didn't know what it is. Yet today, she's now listening to podcasts when working on her garden or her flowers.
That is funny. Yeah, exactly. I mean, podcasting, I mean, once you get into it and you realize all the different podcasts that they are, I mean, I rarely listen to much anything else, that's for sure.
Yeah, and it helps too because you don't have to say, well, what's going on in this movie? So who's this character? Who's this guy?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, talking about movies, what's really cool is they have a thing called descriptive audio. And it used to only work when I would go to a movie theater, is they would give me a pair of headphones and that I would wear, and it would have descriptive audio coming through describing what was happening in the movie. But now it's literally even shows on Netflix and everything on the TV. We have our TV set where it automatically picks up if it's an option. And so a lot of the TV shows, a lot of movies, they have descriptive audio. And so literally it's this person telling you what's happening, and they cut in between dialogue, and so it doesn't interfere with the actual movie. And so that's really pretty awesome too.
That is pretty awesome. And we're going to talk about your podcast here in a minute. But before you do, and that's pretty awesome. We'll talk about your podcast in a minute. But before we do, I would know real quickly as a life coach, what is your definition of success?
I feel like it's personal for each and every person. It's dependent upon what are your goals, what are your hopes, what are your dreams. And I feel like some people, they have a personality where for success for them, it's them being sure that whatever goals are crushed and they're doing better than they could have imagined. That's success. Other people, it's just the fact that they got out of bed today and they have a desire to keep moving forward towards those goals. So I truly think that success is personal to each and every person.
Well, when you went blind, what were some of the new goals you had? And what old goals had to go out?
Um, the only goal that I really had right when I went blind was that I still wanted to graduate with my class. And that was something with all the health issues that I had. My parents, grandparents, doctors, they honestly didn't think was going to happen. But that was my goal. And darn it, if I didn't catch up with all my schoolwork, I never went back to school the rest of my junior year. Instead, I did it all at home. I had teachers with a program called Hospital Homebound, and they came and taught me my school subjects. And I ended up making it back to school for the start of my senior year. And lo and behold, my goal was crushed. I walked across the stage of my high school graduation, and that was pretty epic for me, for sure.
I can imagine that. I bet everyone was clapping, hollering for you.
They were. It was pretty awesome.
I'm glad you deserve it, buddy.
Thank you.
So we got to talk about your podcast. So can you tell us about the Grit, Grace, and Inspiration podcast?
Yeah, absolutely, man. So it is something honestly that I've just become where I love it. I love being able to be creative. So back when I could see, I was somebody who I loved drawing and everything, artistic. And finding podcasting, I've realized I can be artistic and creative now with my voice and creating audio. And so the podcast is amazing. The whole mission of Grit, Grace, and Inspiration is honestly to help that person on the other side of the world who I'll never meet and I'll never hear from. But that person will hear something that I say or my guest says, and it will give them that little spark they needed to keep going one more day. Because the fact is true is that life is hard, no matter what any of us are going through. And I want the podcast, whether it's my solo episodes that I do or my interviews that I do, I just want to be sure that people can listen to this and find inspiration, can find some motivation, and just be encouraged to just keep going no matter what.
Right. And people can find your podcast on all social media platforms, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Good, because it needs to be heard since someone probably needs something. It probably needs to be, we'll try again. Well, I'm glad it's there because, well, it's good. Well, it's good because at some point, somebody needs to hear something when they're having a bad day.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would agree with that. So there's a couple things you say on your website that I want to talk more about. That is walk by faith and sight and not sight. So what do you do to walk by faith and not sight?
And so that is so my faith is a big part of my story. I am only where I am today because of my faith, my relationship with Jesus Christ, and my family. And so when I say walk by faith, not by sight, it's literally what I do every day, in the physical sense of getting up every single morning and pushing forward, without sight. But it's also just done in another sense of realizing that there's so much more to this world than the eye can see. And I was blessed with an opportunity to get to realize it, to get to discover it. And that is where the walk by faith not by sight comes from, is literally just being guided by my faith, by my relationship with Jesus Christ is just the cornerstone of who I am and my story.
Right. I could see that. So I want to talk about now you have these dates, which are blind anniversaries. So can you reiterate why your 17-year blind anniversary was weird?
Yeah, so that was happening in the year 2020, was going to be the 17th anniversary of when I went blind. Now, backing up a little bit, when I found out that I had a brain tumor, my personality, I named my tumor Bob the tumor. And me and my whole family before my surgery, we literally had a big huge going away Bob party. And after my surgery, obviously, it didn't go the way anybody expected. But yeah, every single anniversary, me and my family, we get together to celebrate life. And I was in the hospital the day before my actual surgery. I had to check in the day before. And that night while in the hospital, I wanted Outback Steakhouse. And so my sister and aunt went and picked up takeout from Outback and brought it back to the hospital. So every anniversary, we go to Outback Steakhouse. And what was cool though about the 17th anniversary was the fact that I was 17 when I went blind. So it was 17 years sighted. Now 17 years blind, and that happens to be on the year 2020, a number, anonymous, synonymous with vision. And so I thought that anniversary was too cool. And that's why I had, as a travel agent, literally planned a huge, epic group cruise that there was about 50 people going on over my anniversary to celebrate. And then of course the pandemic ruined those plans. But yeah, that is the significance of the 17th anniversary.
What do you like to get at Outback Steakhouse?
Um, my go-to now is the Alice Springs chicken. Back when I had my brain tumor, it was always a steak of some sort.
Dude, you gotta try their wings. They're
They're
phenomenal.
really, I
Oh my
never would have
goodness,
thought to
bro.
try those.
Best wings in town.
Uh, well, I'm glad to hear that. I will definitely have to give that a try. Do you choose like any particular type of flavor or?
It's just mild, medium, or hot, but they put
Okay,
certain
okay,
spices on there that are really good. Now you do the
okay,
Nashville one. I don't know if they still have it, but
okay.
those are decent.
Yeah,
But don't go
yeah.
for the Nashville. Get the ones that are the appetizer and have the butter in them. I think they're called
Ooh,
Kokubanu row or something like that.
yeah, I have seen that on the menu. Absolutely. I will have to give that a try. I never would have thought that that would have been good. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, but I'm biased because buffalo wings is my go-to meal in general.
Yeah, I hear you.
So before we get into another topic, who's this neurosurgeon you call on each blind anniversary to thank?
Oh man. That is Dr. Trumbull. And he he was located at the time when I had my surgery in Orlando, Florida, which was only an hour from my home. So I live over near the coast near Daytona Beach, and he was literally the leading pediatric neurosurgeon in the country. And he is literally my hero for the fact that he saved my life. And what's amazing about him is a lot of times we think of doctors in that type of status as being kind of like they have that god complex. Not him, because I can remember me and my mom, we would go into his office for all the follow-up appointments after my surgery. And I remember that man, he would literally sit there and he would cry right along with me and my mom. And he always said he didn't understand why I couldn't see. He said everything was intact, everything was perfect, just like all the previous surgeries he'd done of this kind. And yet this happened to me. And so I have always admired him, and I call him my real life superhero. And so he has since moved away. He's out in, I think, like either North or South Dakota now, but you can better bet I have tracked him down. And so every anniversary, I send him a message, just thanking him, filling him in on what's going on. And he is always right there to respond. And it's really been a pretty amazing thing to get to have him in my life, to get to thank, because he is the one of the reasons why I'm still here.
I have a hypothesis. I bet he cried
Okay.
because it was personal to him and professional to
Yeah.
him. For personal reasons,
Yes.
because he took something away from you that was your sight, but maybe for professional
Yeah.
reasons as well, since he's
Yes.
never failed through that surgery, and
Exactly.
he did.
Exactly. Yeah.
That could be,
Exactly.
that's a
Yeah.
theory. I don't know if that's correct, but I'm going to throw that out on the limb.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So I want to talk. So now I want to talk about your speaking engagements. So do you have any speaking engagements coming up, and what speaking engagements have you done?
Yeah, and so I don't have any coming up. And so public speaking is actually something that I'm really starting to pursue quite a bit. I've done some little things, like I have spoken at different schools and stuff, middle schools, elementary schools, and I did one big event back in like 2017. And it had a room of like 100 people that I got to speak at, and that was cool, but that was about it. And then it's actually a new thing that I'm actually really starting to pursue, is the idea of doing more public speaking, because I really enjoy it and I love it, and I feel like it could just be one more opportunity for me to spread my message.
Maybe you can start with me. What I could do for you
Yay!
is after this is done, I'll talk to my mother and we'll see about you speaking to her classroom virtually or in person.
Awesome. That would be cool.
All right. So, but there are two stories I want to talk about. So I call it the grocery store story and the homeless child asking questions story. The first one is where the child basically knows you after you spoke, but then the other one kept asking you questions and you found out she was homeless.
Yes.
So
Um,
why are those two
yeah. Oh, go ahead.
stories? So I'm just wondering, why are those two stories a keynote in your life?
Oh, wow. It's funny that you bring this up, because I haven't even thought about that in a long time. I was speaking, I think it was my second year in a row speaking at the middle school, and the teacher who I spoke with, her class, was actually my own sixth grade teacher, and so I would was speaking to her class, and yeah, there was one student, and ironically, it was the one student who the teacher had warned me about prior to all the students coming into class. Was she's like, listen, there's one kid who might give us some trouble. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, I can handle it. And what was really powerful was, as I shared my story, and I kind of tailor my story dependent upon the age of the students I'm talking to. So these were middle schoolers. So I talked a little bit more about the actual story of, really overcoming it, and how it was like going back to school and stuff. The younger kids who I talk to, I just make myself out to be a blind superhero and show off all my cool technology. Um, but in this classroom that day, I remember there was one student, one girl, and I didn't even know that she was the one who was the quote unquote bad one, but she was so engaged, so just kept asking so many questions. And I would find out that she would actually ask the teacher the next day even more things about me. And you're right. That student, I found out after the class ended, my friend, the teacher, she let me know that she actually just found out that that girl is actually homeless, that her and her mom and sister were living in their car. And I remember that really impacted me, because I thought then, you know what? I'm not just here speaking to a bunch of kids. I'm here with an opportunity to maybe be that one voice they needed to hear, to remind them that it's going to be okay, that life's going to get better, and that, yeah, things may be hard right now, but they don't have to stay like that. And so, yeah, it was a pretty meaningful thing for me.
Well, it probably helped her too because she got attention, and it was probably the first time in a while since she's got positive attention. Students, when they act up, in my opinion, it's because they want attention, whether it's positive or negative. And even though it's
Yes.
negative, someone's still paying attention to them. And that's what every student slash child wants.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thankfully, I got it from my family, but unfortunately, not from my peers.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But there's someone else I know you talked about who's pretty important to your life, John. So tell us about John, who you met at the hospital.
Yeah, so I actually did not meet John. My family did, though. So ironically, the type of tumor I had was pretty rare. And yet while I was in the hospital, after, because I remained in the hospital for about 2 weeks after surgery. And during that time, my family would come to find out that another boy had just been transferred from another hospital to the hospital where I was due to complications he was having. And his name was John. And he was the same age as me, had the same tumor as me. And though he wasn't doing real good. And I had a huge family support there. My both sides of my family, my mom's side, my dad's side, everybody was there, constantly helping. John only just had his mom was the only one there. And so my family really kind of took her under their wing. They would look out for her, or, when, needed to save seats or whatever, they would be sure that they looked after her stuff. And my mom was the one who really got to become friends with her during this time. And I would end up, so surgery was October 28th. I would come home, I believe on November 13th. I would come home. John was still in the hospital, and my mom actually made a couple of trips back and forth over there. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it was on Thanksgiving Day that John passed away. And in the years since then, it's really always kind of been there in the back of my mind. It's eaten me up at times, because I've thought, why did I get to live and he had to die? Why did my mom get to keep me and his mom didn't? And I don't have an answer for that. I don't think anybody does. Only God knows that. But I remember on my 14th anniversary, I actually for the first time got to meet John's mom. I didn't know if she would want to meet me. But luckily my mom had been friends with her through Facebook or something, and so we were able to reach out to her, and I got to meet her, and that was pretty darn amazing for me. Because I knew it would be hard for her. I mean, she was staring, it was crazy, man. Literally, they said that me and him, we even looked alike. We had the same type body shape. We were like the same person. Almost even listening to her talk about him, a similar personality. And I was grateful though that she did agree, and me and my mom met her for lunch on my anniversary that year. And I remember hugging her when we were leaving, and I remember crying, and I told her that I was sorry. I was sorry, and I didn't understand why I got to stay. And I meant it. And to this day, I think about John. And sometimes, honestly, when the days are hard, I have to think, you know what, Kevin, you were given a second chance, you and for John. You got to keep pushing through.
Wow, man, you really do. And what kills me, it was on Thanksgiving Day. I just hope her family was there for her even more.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe you'll see him down the road, buddy.
Yeah, I know I will. I know I will.
I'm glad you feel that way. Now, folks,
Yeah.
we'll be right back. We're going to hear an ad from the Bluebird. So let's get to it. Have you ever wondered what is the most fun thing to do in Bloomington, Indiana? If you do not know, I have the answer for you, because it is time to bring your best dance moves to the Bluebird in Bloomington, Indiana. This rock club does not only host live music, but has karaoke nights as well. Please visit the Bluebird at 216 North Walnut Street, Bloomington, Indiana 4704. If you have any questions, please contact them at 812 812-336-398. I repeat, that's 812-336-398. Or leave them an email at their email address, dkubayak1@gmail.com. That is spelled DKUBIAK1@gmail.com. This is the place to be if you want to have a great time. I can promise you that. All right, folks, are back. You might meet a bluebird there. You never know. All right, folks, are back. You might see a bluebird there. You never know. So now, Kevin, I wanted to talk to you about adapting. So what do you do to adapt quickly in a new environment? So when you go from home, where it's a small space, now you're at work where there's people and lots of obstacles, such as tables and chairs. How do you, and I quote, see that?
Yeah. So when I am in a new environment, I have a couple of different ways. It's funny, I adapt very quickly and very easily to new situations. And I of course have a cane that I use, a mobility cane that I, hold out in front of me. And so I can identify, where, like we'll say like sometimes going to a hotel when you're traveling, and hotels, I mean, they're pretty basic. And so you learn, oh, okay, here's the dresser, here's the beds. But I'll tell you one thing that makes it really easy when in a new environment and trying to figure out is the fact that I use a skill of echolocation. And so that enables me to kind of preview my environment by seeing through sound. And so literally I can, talking about say maybe the hotel room. I mean, I can walk in and the everything has shape. I mean, I do some clicks and I see the dresser or see the beds. And so that makes adapting to a new environment pretty darn easy.
Right, I can see that. So you also hated school. What about school did you hate? Was it the structure? Was it teachers? Was it people not being patient with you? Was it just you not liking it because you were just a snotty kid? Was it teachers being snotty? What were the factors, bub?
Oh man. I don't really know why I hated school so much. I mean, I was somebody who I was very good all in school. I got good grades. I would always have a lot of friends, but I grew up as a kid with my older sister who's 5 years older and my cousin who is 5 years older. And so the whole time growing up, I grew up with them. And so I was honestly like way more mature than my age group. And so a lot of times, growing up, just thought that a lot of the stuff that the kids my own age were doing was kind of silly and stupid. And so I think that was one reason. And then but I think even more so than that, I mean, maybe that impacted even like outside of school why I didn't hang out with a lot of friends up until, high school. About like 10th grade is when I actually started hanging out with a lot of friends outside of school. But I think it was just in school, I don't know, man. It was like I just always I'd rather be home or I'd rather be out doing something. I just always kind of felt like all this stuff we're doing in here is just so silly and stupid, and I just wasn't a fan.
Right. And to a point, I hate to say this, I did like school. I was the complete opposite. But for
Okay,
some, with what they're going to do for a career, it's not needed. How is an
e-
English paper going to help someone do construction?
exactly. Exactly. I agree.
I mean, you're not writing a paragraph about how you're going to build the house.
Exactly. I agree. Yeah. Yeah, I so believe, and that's why I'm a big supporter of like especially like the what do they call them, like the vocational colleges and stuff that teach students, different, trades and stuff. I think that stuff is so needed, and I believe personally that our schools should be more adapted to creating just good humans rather than than just good students who can write a bunch of essays.
But it's also hard too when every student has a variety of interests and it's not just one interest. A teacher could probably do that if everyone loved podcasting.
Yep, it's true. Yep, I mean you are right. I mean that's exactly why I'm not a teacher, and I don't and I don't plan out the education system. I will definitely be glad to leave that to somebody else.
Me neither. But on the flip side, what they can do is one on ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know at points you turned to the Incredible Hulk because your sodium was up. What were some of the crazy stories you heard when you, because your sodium was up, turned to the Incredible Hulk?
Yeah, so that was that point, after brain surgery in the ICU, and the stories my family have are crazy. I mean, I would do crazy stuff like my nana, my grandmother, apparently I would use her finger I thought was my toothbrush. And so I would literally take her hand holding her finger and brush all of my teeth. And the funniest thing though is they said that I then grabbed hold of her forearm and started squeezing. And they're like, Kevin, what are you doing? I'm trying to get the toothpaste to come out. And apparently I thought her arm was a toothpaste bottle. So I did some funny stuff like that. But in terms of like the Incredible Hulk, apparently at one point, and I mean, like you said, I was a little kid then, 5'3". Apparently I picked my dad up by the neck. He was apparently leaning over my hospital bed, and apparently one-handed, I picked him up by the neck and lifted him off the ground, which is just totally crazy. That I even could have such kind of strength, but they relate that all to the sodium. And so yeah, man, the stories that my family tell, and especially every anniversary they really come out, is just crazy because like I said, I was so bad that literally they would take shifts of, I think, like no more than like 10 minutes. It would be shifts of 5 different people. So all of my family members, so I'm talking like grandparents, but aunts and uncles and cousins were all there. And they were amazing because literally they didn't want the hospital staff to have to strap me down. They didn't want to do that. And so literally they would do shifts of like 5 people, and all they could take was like 10 minutes at a time because they'd be so worn out trying to keep me under control. Yeah, I apparently was crazy.
At least you didn't think her finger was deodorant. And you're trying to do
Yeah,
it's like, ksh, ksh. Why?
yeah,
Why do I still
yeah,
have BO? I'm using
yeah,
deodorant.
exactly. And I think one funny thing was they said at one point, I guess maybe I had gotten to a point I was using the bathroom, and apparently in the hospital room it was like the cabinet, I don't know, like the door flipped open and it was a toilet or something. And they said that I was like, my immediate reaction was, what kind of hotel is this? So yeah, so many funny things.
There, I can imagine. You talk about ICU. There's a song about the ICU that's produced by Citizen Soldier. That's a good song, man. Hear that one out. You might have some
Yeah,
resemblance to it since you were in the ICU.
exactly.
And we were talking about your parents. So, what have your parents and grandparents done to support you?
Oh man. Everything. My family is everything to me. One of the greatest gifts is the fact that through all of this, I got to become best friends with my mom and dad, best friends with my nana, best friends with my sister, which is really powerful. Um, they have just been there to support me in all their different ways. My dad, talking about, from, recently after becoming blind, I mean, my dad was there. My dad's the wild and crazy guy. And and so he would be sure that, it was no time before we're out doing crazy stuff, out in the woods or whatever. My mom, of course, was there helping to take care of me and figure out all the doctor's appointments and care for me. And, and my Nana, I mean, my goodness, my Nana, she took care of me during the daytime. My mom would drop me off at her house in the morning. My papa would go to work and it would just be me and Nana. And she was there with me. I mean, my goodness, she's the reason I even graduated high school, is because she would literally be there to work with me when the teachers would come to her house and teach me. My Nana was there. But more than anything else, my parents, my Nana, my sister, they were just there for me. They became just my support system, my rocks to lean on. Because it took a really long time for me to learn how to love this life again. I'm talking a long time, probably the better part of 10 years before I was really and truly ready to move forward with my life. And that whole time though, I had my family to lean on. And I mean, still to this day, I have my family to lean on. And I can never thank God enough for giving me the family that I have.
All right. You said you and your dad are wild. What crazy and wild things did you two do?
With my dad,
Yep.
me and my dad, yeah. So I mentioned that I grew up riding dirt bikes and four wheelers. So obviously, after I went blind, I couldn't ride my four wheeler anymore. We ended up selling it. And when we sold it, we ended up buying, they literally had first come out at this point, was what they call a side by side. And so I call it basically like a golf cart on steroids. And so basically made for off-roading. And so me and him, I remember we bought one of those, and so we would go out and just be out in the woods, and I mean, just that thing would fly. And so, I would sit, I'm in the passenger seat, my dad's driving, and so, I mean, we would be out in the woods getting muddy, doing all that craziness, and just all kinds of fun stuff. And I mean, that was literally how it always was with my dad, always growing up. I mean, when I was a little kid, like, so my mom and dad, they got divorced when I was little. And I would go and spend every Wednesday night and I think every Saturday night with my dad. And I can remember we and him when I was little, we were big into like rollerblading, and we didn't just rollerblade on the street. No, we would literally go to all the big bridges in our city and we would rollerblade down the bridges and stuff. And so yeah, me and my dad, we've just always done crazy stuff together. And it's just been been a lot of fun.
Well, with him driving, it probably was like a roller coaster to you.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Hey, you don't have to pay any music part to go on one. You got yours at home. You lucky
That's
dog.
right. That's right.
So we'll wrap her up here. These are just for fun. So, what is your paradise meal and why is it your favorite?
Oh my goodness. Barbecue 110%. And barbecue meaning some pulled pork with some sweet sauce, some barbecue beans, and some coleslaw and a piece of garlic bread. If I had a last meal, that is it. And I apparently it's in my blood because my grandfather, my dad's dad, he literally ate barbecue every single day of his life. He went to lunch every single day at the barbecue restaurant. And then on Friday evening, him and my grandmother would go there for dinner. And so I guess I get it through the genes.
Well, Kevin, let me tell you this. One of my previous guests and a sponsor from Great White Smokes, and for listeners, see 259 Getting Back to Dave White, has a food truck that sells barbecue products and food. So what I'll do for
Oh,
you is when we're done, I'll have Dave give you some barbecue food recipes.
yeah. Awesome, man. That sounds great.
Not a problem. So now, what has been your favorite vacation you've ever taken, and why did you enjoy that vacation very much?
Oh, goodness. Oh man. I've been on a lot of them. Probably, and I don't know if there was any one particular, but I've got to go on quite a few cruises, like in the Caribbean, and some of my favorite memories are on those cruises, and I remember one in particular. We went, it was me, my sister, and my dad, and we went with his mom, so my grandmother, and her brother, and all of their friends and stuff. It was a big, huge group. And what was cool is I was a travel agent at the time, so I booked the entire trip for everybody. And we had this amazing week-long cruise. I mean, did all these crazy cool excursions. My grandmother, she would always go on these cruises, but they would never get off the boat at the different stops. They would always just stay on the boat. Well, she was with, me and my sister and dad, and so she would go out on the catamaran rides, and she had so much fun. She would become like the life of the party. It was hysterical. And I remember back on the ship, I remember she was big into playing blackjack. And darn it, if she didn't win the entire blackjack tournament on that cruise. And it was really amazing. And the part that makes it so memorable was I remember one of the last nights we were on the cruise. We were at the specialty restaurant, the specialty steakhouse, and I remember I got to sit down at the end of the table next to my Uncle Tom, and he was kind of the head of the group, and he's the one who cruised all the time. And so when I started my travel business, he started using me. And I remember it was, one of the first times that I really got to sit with him and talk with him. I mean, it's, one of those family members you only ever see at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. And so we had such an amazing time. And I'm so grateful because it was after that cruise, not long after that, he would pass away. And so grateful that I have that memory of getting to spend that time with him.
I'm glad you had that memory too. So, but before we go, did your dad do anything wild on the cruise as well?
I don't remember him doing anything too wild, other than it seems like we had some type of snorkeling incident off one of the catamarans where he did something that was illegal or something, and so it caused a ruckus. But that was it.
Well, nice job, Dad. Really nice job, right?
Exactly.
All right. Well, Kevin, I think that's all. Is there any closing remarks you'd like to say, buddy, before we head out?
Oh, dude, man, I just want to thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me on the podcast today, and I love what you're doing. I love your spirit, man. And I appreciate you letting me be a part of it. So thank you.
Anytime, brother. Have a good one.